Sitting across from Olivia in a quiet downtown coffee shop, I stirred my drink absently, waiting for whatever reason had compelled her to call me here. It had been only 2 weeks since the divorce was finalized, and when she asked to meet, I'd agreed. Out of curiosity, maybe, or just to get some kind of closure. What a mistake. You know, I never loved you, she said, her tone almost casual as she swirled her latte, a smug little smile curling her lips. Your family's money was the only thing I ever cared about. I watched her, the woman I had spent 3 years of my life with, as she dismantled our marriage with nothing more than a few careless words. She wasn't done. Your trust fund was the target the whole time. She sounded almost disappointed that I wasn't reacting, her eyes scanning my face for any sign of distress. Too bad your parents kept such tight control. All that time wasted for practically nothing. Then, unbelievably, she laughed. Laughed as if the last 3 years had been some tedious inconvenience, as if my presence in her life had been nothing but a failed investment. She checked her phone, clearly bored with me now, with this conversation that she had no doubt orchestrated to wound me. Look at you, still so quiet, she taunted, tilting her head. No wonder it was so easy to fool you. Bradley. That name slipped from her lips like an afterthought, but I caught it immediately. Bradley, her co-worker, the one who had started appearing in her Instagram stories 4 months before she asked for a divorce. The one I had suspected all along. She leaned forward, now irritated by my silence. Nothing to say? I simply smiled, lifted my coffee, and stood. I think you've said enough for both of us. That's it? She called after me as I walked away. You're just going to leave? I paused briefly, turning just enough to meet her gaze. What else is there to say? The look on her face was almost worth the 6 months of hell she had put me through. She had wanted a reaction, tears, anger, something she could film on her phone and show Bradley later, proof of how pathetic I was. Instead, all she got was calm acceptance. What she didn't know was that I had suspected her little game for months. And what she also didn't know was exactly who Bradley Hargrove really was. That, more than anything, was about to make all the difference. I hadn't planned revenge. Sometimes the universe handles that all on its own. You just have to be patient enough to watch it unfold. 3 weeks passed since that conversation, and my phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Olivia had called 32 times and left 17 voicemails in the last 48 hours alone. I hadn't listened to a single one. 2 days after our coffee shop meeting, I ran into my cousin Derek at the gym. We didn't see each other often, but we'd always gotten along. After catching up, I mentioned Olivia's parting confession. Olivia? Wait, isn't she dating that Bradley guy now? Derek asked. Yeah. How do you know? Derek's expression darkened. Bradley Hargrove works at my investment firm. He's been under investigation for months. The guy's a con artist, specializes in recently divorced women with money. Gets them to invest in his exclusive opportunities that don't actually exist. My stomach dropped, not because I still cared about Olivia, but because despite everything, I wouldn't wish that fate on anyone. You sure it's the same guy? I asked, already knowing the answer. I showed him her Instagram. That's him. 100%. Derek looked serious. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but the FBI's been building a case. They're moving on him soon. If she's given him money. I considered warning her. For about 30 seconds. Then I remembered the way she had laughed in my face, telling me she had never loved me. Not my problem, I said finally. We're divorced. Her financial decisions aren't my concern anymore. For days later, it happened. Bradley Hargrove was arrested in the middle of a fancy restaurant downtown. I only knew because Olivia called me at 9:43 p.m., hysterical. They took Bradley, she sobbed, her words barely coherent. The FBI just walked in and handcuffed him right in the middle of dinner. I stayed silent, waiting. I gave him money, she choked out. A lot of money. He said it was a special investment opportunity. How much? I asked, my voice neutral. 200,000, she whispered. My entire divorce settlement. And I borrowed against my parents' house. They don't know yet. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry that happened to you, Olivia. But I'm not sure what you want me to do about it. Please, she begged, her voice cracking. Your family knows people. Your dad's law firm. I let out a slow breath. You never loved me. You married me for my money. My voice was quiet, even. Those kinds of declarations make it hard to believe anything you say now. Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, I didn't mean it. Goodbye, Olivia. I hung up and blocked her number. But she didn't stop. She started calling from different phones, creating new email addresses, even showing up at my office. Security had to escort her out. From what Derek told me, Bradley had scammed at least 15 women out of approximately $3.7 million. Olivia wasn't even his biggest target, just his most recent. I won't lie. There was a certain poetic justice to the whole thing. The woman who married me to steal my family's money ended up being the one who got played. The same game, just run by someone far more efficient. My lawyer called this morning. Olivia is trying to challenge our divorce settlement, claiming she was under duress when she signed. It won't work. The agreement is ironclad. And her little coffee shop confession? That doesn't exactly help her case. Sometimes, you don't have to do anything at all for karma to find its way. I hadn't seen them since the divorce was finalized. When I opened the door, Olivia's parents stood before me, looking nothing like the proud, composed people I had once known. Her father, always so confident, always so condescending toward me, couldn't even meet my eyes. Her mother, usually impeccably put together, looked exhausted, worn down by something far beyond age. "We need your help," she said the moment I let them inside. "Olivia's in serious trouble." I listened in silence as they told me everything. Olivia hadn't just given Bradley her divorce settlement. She had convinced them to mortgage their home to invest with him, too. They had trusted her, trusted the man she vouched for, and put in everything they had, $450,000, their entire retirement fund. And now it was gone. "The FBI says we're victims," her father said, voice breaking. "But that doesn't get our money back. We're going to lose our house." For the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt genuine sympathy. Unlike their daughter, Olivia's parents had always been decent to me. I understood their desperation. But that didn't mean I could fix this. "I'm sorry," I said carefully, "but I don't see how I can help." Her mother leaned forward, gripping her hands tightly. "Your father's law firm represents some of the biggest financial institutions in the state. If anyone could help recover at least some of the money." And there it was. Not just Olivia, but her entire family had seen me as a connection to power, to resources, to something they could use when it suited them. "My father's firm specializes in corporate law, not recovering funds from financial fraud," I explained. "And even if they did, there would be a serious conflict of interest, given my history with Olivia." They looked crushed, but I held firm. The most I could offer was to refer them to a lawyer who specialized in victim advocacy for financial crimes. They had no choice but to accept, and when they left, I sat for a long time, thinking about how Olivia's choices had rippled outward, harming people who didn't deserve it. That's when I decided to make one small, silent intervention. I called Derek and asked if there was a victim advocacy group for those affected by Bradley's schemes. He gave me a contact, and I anonymously paid for Olivia's parents to have legal representation. They would never know it was me. Meanwhile, Bradley's case exploded. The deeper authorities dug, the more they uncovered. What started as 15 victims turned into 32. The original $3.7 million in stolen funds ballooned to $8.2 million. He had been running his con for years, moving from city to city, leaving ruined lives in his wake. Then, one evening, I found a handwritten letter in my mailbox. "I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm desperate. I've lost everything. My apartment, my car, my job. They fired me when Bradley's victims started showing up at my office. My parents won't speak to me. I have nowhere to go." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. But I did make one last call. A former colleague ran a women's shelter, and I made a donation in Olivia's name, passing along her contact information. She would never know it came from me, but at least she had somewhere to turn. People have asked me if I feel satisfied, watching Olivia fall apart. The truth? I don't. There's no joy in seeing someone self-destruct, even someone who once tried to hurt you. What I do feel is free. Sometimes you don't need revenge. You just need to step back and let people face the consequences of their own actions. Life, meanwhile, has moved forward. I've started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just casual conversations over coffee. That's how I met Maya, a veterinarian who treats my neighbor's dog. When she asked about my ex, I gave her the briefest version of the story. She listened, nodded, and then changed the subject entirely, to whether dogs could be left-handed. It was, without a doubt, the most refreshing conversation I'd had in a year. 6 months have passed since everything with Olivia and Bradley came to a head, and I suppose this is where the story truly ends. Bradley took a plea deal, 15 years in federal prison. Some victims might recover a fraction of their money, but most of it is gone forever. Olivia testified at his sentencing, breaking down in tears, describing how she had lost everything. She didn't mention that she had been running a smaller version of the same game herself, just less successfully. I haven't spoken to her, but through mutual friends, I hear things. She's living with a cousin in another state, working as a waitress. Her parents had to sell their house, but managed to find a small condo they could afford. Thanks to the victim advocacy group I connected them with, they've recovered about 18% of their investments. Far from enough, but something. As for me, Maya and I have been together for almost 4 months now. By our third date, I told her everything. Her response was simple, perfect. "That sucks," she said. "But it clearly wasn't about you. Some people just see others as stepping stones." Last week, I got a friend request from Olivia. I declined it, but before I closed the page, I noticed her profile was public. Her most recent post was a long, reflective essay about growth through adversity, about learning to value people over possessions. Maybe she's changed. Maybe it's just a new angle. Either way, not my problem. 2 days ago, I was cleaning out some old files and stumbled across our wedding photos. I had forgotten I still had them. For a moment, I stared at the woman who had once promised me forever, the woman who later admitted she never loved me. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Not even satisfaction at how things had turned out. Just nothing. That's when I knew, truly and completely, that I was over it. Next month, Maya and I are heading to Costa Rica. She's always wanted to see the rainforest, and I've always wanted to learn how to surf. My life is moving forward in ways I couldn't have imagined a year ago. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't plotting elaborate schemes or even watching someone get what they deserve. Sometimes, it's just living well while they deal with the mess they've made. If there's any lesson in all of this, it's that you can't control what people do to you, but you can control how you respond. Olivia tried to use me for my family's money and failed. Bradley used Olivia for her money and succeeded, for a while. But in the end, the only person who truly came out ahead was the one who refused to play those games at all.